Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. I've mentioned briefly before that I try not to watch two similar shows in a row, and I figured there was no show on my radar less similar to Jiu-Osei than Sakura Trick. I remembered hearing a lot of mixed reviews about it when it first came out, and when that happens I like to make my own opinions, rather than take either the praise or criticism to heart. So I finally decided to check it out, and once again you can beware for spoilers, because a lot of the really important events happen right at the end. Sakura Trick follows a group of girls through their first year of high school. Their school is actually about to shut down. This year's freshmen will be the last graduating class, so the whole show has this air about it of making the most of every day and appreciating what you have before it's gone, which I do think falls short in some ways. It's not like they're in danger of being split up halfway through, and the show only goes through their first year. We don't get to see them graduate and shut down the school officially. The most we get is, near the end of the year, they talk about how it doesn't really feel like they'll be upperclassmen because there won't be any new students. But it is a really good theme for a slice-of-life show in general, and I do think it contributes to what Sakura Trick's actual main focus is. Our main protagonists are Haruka and Yu, two girls who became best friends during middle school. Now that they're part of a bigger group of friends and feeling this pressure to make every moment count, Haruka wants to have something with Yu that will sort of set them apart and cement in how special they are to each other. Ultimately, they decide on a kiss, and I feel like I'm rushing right into the middle of things, but this first kiss is a really good example of a lot of points I wanted to make about this show as a whole. For one, their very first kiss seemed just a little too intense, given that they were both a little uncomfortable with the idea at first. There is definitely a fan service element to this show, which I'm not opposed to in general, but it feels really out of place here about 50% of the time. Like, as the series progresses and the girls start experimenting and exploring their relationship more, when they're getting into the mood themselves, that makes sense. There's nothing distracting about composing those scenes in a bunch of angles designed to sexualize your characters, but the other half of the time the series likes to cut away during regular, casual conversations for shots of the girls' boobs. Or like the very opening scene of episode 1, which is Haruka and Yu talking on the phone about their first day of high school the night before, coupled with these long shots traveling up their bodies. It just doesn't really fit with the cutesy, lighthearted aesthetic that this show is trying for. Which is the second point I was going to make, and which is the part I think their first kiss scene does really well, because it is cute and lighthearted. A good beginning to a relationship that's going to become a little more serious later on. They very much feel like kids who are trying to make some grand gesture by imitating adults, and there are definitely some romantic vibes from the start, but it feels believable that they wouldn't recognize those for what they are at this stage. Which is something I'll have a lot more to say about once we've reached the more serious plot that develops near the end. So at the beginning, I thought we were off to a really good start. And then it starts to derail a little. I should mention that I'm not really a slice-of-life fan in general. I recently praised Toradora for being the best I'd ever seen that element handled. There was a big focus on their everyday lives, but it was told in one continuous story. Sakura Trick is the other kind of slice of life that I'm not so fond of. It's told through a snapshots form of storytelling. Each episode is actually 2 mini-stories, and some things get called back to later, but for the most part, it's just an excuse to see 2 girls kiss in a variety of different scenarios. Which was cute and fun a lot of the time, but not really meaningful the way I'd wanted this show to be. One thing I did remember hearing pretty unanimously about this show was that 2 of the side characters, the 2 making up the other canon relationship in this show, were far more interesting than our main pair, which I did find to be true and wasn't really surprised by. Yu and Haruka don't actually have a ton of character, to be honest. There are a lot of little things, like how Yu is more athletic, where Haruka is better about keeping on top of their schoolwork, or how Yu is more reserved about their relationship, whereas it only takes minimal prompting to start Haruka fantasizing about possible scenarios the two could find themselves in. But for the most part, they're both just kind of cute and airheaded. Shizuku and Kotone definitely play off of each other a little more solidly. One is shy and quiet, and the other is outgoing and confident. They were childhood friends, reunited after separating for middle school, and they make much better use of the whole making the most of every day theme. Shizuku was so introverted that she didn't really have any friends during middle school, and credits Kotone with her inclusion in this group now. And Kotone comes from a very wealthy background with a lot of expectations. At the start of the story, she moves in with Shizuku to spend as much time with her as possible, because there's an arranged marriage waiting for her as soon as they graduate. They're really the more interesting couple, and they get a few of the mini-episodes to themselves, but at the end of the day, they're not the main protagonists. Haruka and Yu are. So, they raise the stakes in the main story a little early on. Yu's older sister Mitsuki starts to get suspicious of how close the two seem. She's the student council president, so she's well respected around the school. She asks the last two members of her sister's group, the ones I lovingly dubbed the straight friends until I could finally remember their names around episode 5 or 6, to keep an eye on them, and this is one of those few plot points that will have long-reaching consequences. But it doesn't get Mitsuki the immediate answers she was looking for, so she continues to stick close and make her own observations, which I was really optimistic about at first. At this point in the story, Yu and Haruka's relationship has been progressing, but not to the point where they've had to really talk about it yet. Being confronted by someone would be the thing that would make or break that relationship, force them to define it. It didn't look like there was much chance of that happening, but that did say a lot about the kind of atmosphere they'd grown up in. Because they were never very subtle, but every time someone around them starts to think they're unusually close, it's brushed off with comments like, "Don't you think you're getting a little too old to be acting like that?" Or if anyone does start to suspect they're in a romantic relationship, it's brushed off with, "Oh, but they're both girls," and that's the end of it. Maybe it feels like I'm drawing out this point a little too long, but this is the part that really interested me. The romance itself was light and fluffy and kind of bland, but we're given enough hints right off the bat that same-sex relationships aren't a regular thing in their society that I was eager to see it addressed. And I'll be honest, this series tried really hard to live up to my expectations. Yu's sister doesn't play quite the role in this story that I wanted her to. Once she starts getting closer to her sister's friends, she's soon more than happy to turn a blind eye to the things going on between Yu and Haruka, because she's developed her own crush on Haruka, so most of the series is just one light, inconsequential mini-story after another. Things start to pick back up around the end, though. I see episode 8 kind of as the turning point, and I think it might be the best episode in the whole show. The first half of the story is Haruka and Yu preparing for Haruka's cousin's wedding. Except, Yu misheard the invitation and spends the whole outing thinking Haruka's proposed and they're the ones getting married, which was just another fun, fluffy mini-adventure, until it carries over to the next one, the Christmas episode, where Yu has been kind of distant ever since, because now that idea's been planted and she's thinking about their relationship more seriously. It ends when they go to a Christmas light show, and with that as their background, they share their first attempt at a true love confession and kiss in public for the first time. Not that the significance of that is ever addressed. I think the audience is just supposed to buy that the crowd of people around them are distracted by the light show, but it continues from there. Kaede, one of the two tasked with observing them early on, is the first to call out their relationship for what it is and say that they're dating in episode 10, and though the whole "but they're both girls" conundrum is still there to give her pause, it's very much an afterthought by this point. for everyone except Mitsuki, who's been happily ignoring the intensity of their relationship for quite some time now. She seems shocked at first, but finally catches them in the act at the end of episode 11. And I have to say, though this show's comedic timing was pretty good, its visuals were always about as simple as it gets. I'm pretty sure everything but the characters was CG, and there are quite a few scenes where they literally cut lines around whatever the main characters are doing, and nothing else in the room is moving or colored in. But some of the dramatic scenes near the end were really well done with the lighting and all that. Still simple, but it got all the emotion across that it was meant to. And the final resolution was not exactly everything I wanted it to be. Mitsuki simultaneously confronts them about their relationship and confesses her own crush. And I mean, Yu says all the right things, about how all that matters is that they care about each other. And Mitsuki goes off to college, telling herself that what she liked about Haruka all along was just how much she cared for her sister. But when it comes time for the two to really define their relationship, it's played off like Haruka doesn't understand the concept of dating. Like she doesn't get why people would look at what she has with you and think they're dating, which was really dumb. But they follow this up with another attempt at a love confession, and there's every implication that they'll go on to live happily ever after, so it's like right there at the edge of being everything I wanted it to be. And to be fair, it is probably the best I've seen it addressed. Most anime I've seen with same-sex couples, either everyone's gay, or the fact that the couple is a little out of the norm and not entirely accepted in society just isn't brought up at all. And I mean, if that's the price you have to pay for happy endings, I can accept those settings most of the time. But I like to see it addressed openly. I feel like there's always a missing piece to those love stories if it's not. I guess I'm just trying to say that if Yuri on Ice ever gets its continuation, I just want a scene where they call their relationship out for what it is and talk about their future. No more of this, their engagement rings are just good luck charms bullshit, okay? That's all I ask. But to get back on track, all in all, Sakura Trick was a good anime. Not really my type of anime usually. I did get kind of lost in the slice-of-lifeness of it around the middle, but that's just me. Stories of ordinary kids doing ordinary things just don't tend to hold my interest for long. But the romance was cute, and just meaningful enough to be moving at times. They don't try to play it off like they're just really good friends all the way up to the end, like I was kind of expecting. I am fairly confident that if this sounds like the kind of story you'd enjoy, I don't think you'll be disappointed. Personally, I don't think I could sit through the whole thing a second time, but I definitely watched the highlights again, so it has my recommendation. Thank you for watching.